Yeah, it's your boy Ray on the mic. Let's go.
Mic check, mic check. Welcome to On the Mic with Ray White, where we share life lessons, encourage self-reflection, and equip you to take action. My name is Ray White, and I am juiced that you're taking time to listen to this episode today. And we got a fire interview for you right now. Fire! All the claps. You hear the claps, you see the claps. Shout out to YouTube viewers and the podcast listeners. Joseph Jackson hops onto the mic. Joseph Jackson is a phenomenal human being, Willamette graduate, basketball player, baller, educator, and in the healthcare field. Father, husband, doing some phenomenal things up here in the Portland area, and interventionist in the healthcare institution up here in Portland, and is just doing some great work. He got the chance to come on the podcast just to share his story of his journey from college, of being a basketball athlete, navigating that life, navigating his faith, navigating what it looks like to be a college athlete on the campus of Willamette. Shout out to Bearcats. All the way up to his journey of teaching overseas and his experience there, to now working in the healthcare field, and also, which on this episode he talks about his soon to be newborn baby, which is now entered into this world. So congratulations to the Jackson family. But this is a fun interview. This is a fun podcast, one episode, just to hear a little bit about Joseph's story and some of the lessons that he's learned along the way, and what does it mean to be a light into this world, into this space. So be sure to check out Joseph Jackson on all social media platforms. I'll be sure to drop that into the show notes so you can take a look at that. But I had a fun time listening to his story on this podcast, and I know you will too. So be sure you check out this episode titled Being the Light, featuring Joseph Jackson. Let me know what y'all think. Hey, Joseph, man. Welcome to the podcast. Good morning to you. How are you today?
Man, I'm doing really good. Appreciate you having me on this morning.
Man, I'm excited to have you on as well. For the listeners, OTM listeners, Joseph Jackson is somebody I met at Willamette. Go Bearcats. He actually, during his first year, was the first year that we started a Mosaic mentoring group. And Joseph was my mentee, actually. That's how I got to know him. And former basketball player, baller in that right. So we'll get to hear about his story and what he's doing today. And I just think he's a phenomenal character that would be awesome to have in the next generation to hear. So Joseph, I didn't prepare you for this question strategically.
Right.
But the question I love to ask every guest is, what is your life mission or mantra that you live by?
Oh man, that was good. Okay, right. That was good.
Yeah, we starting off hot. Let's go.
All right. Mantra or mission. Wow. I don't know if I necessarily have a mantra you could put like on a bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
But something my dad has always told me is that like you're always being watched. Like you never know who sees you or who's watching you. And he was always talking about, basketball, just like how you carry yourself on the court, when you get mad or upset at a call or something like that. But I think that's always just kind of like stuck with me, because then also too, on the positive side of it, you have people come up to you and say, hey, when this happened, like that really, put a smile on my face, or that really inspired me. And then you sit there and think about it, you're like, I didn't even know that they noticed that, So obviously the negative side is like someone could see something and like kind of turn away, but then you also don't know how many people around you that you're inspiring. And so that's kind of like what I hold myself to, and to make sure that, when I'm going throughout things, people are watching, whether I know it or not. And my goal is to be a light, to those around me, especially during this time. And even more so probably in the last year and a half, 2 years with COVID and all the other, social justice things that are happening that are really just pulling on people. Now more than ever, I think, people need to see a light. And so if I can be any kind of light to those around me, I'm definitely going to try to do that.
I love it. That's a good word, man. Good word. Shout out to Pops. That's a good word.
Yeah.
No, awesome.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about how. So like I mentioned, we met at Willamette, and we're both athletes. You did you basketball, and I did football. Um, I'm super intrigued by just your experience at Willamette, and more so just playing college basketball. Not many folks get the opportunity to say they play collegiate sports. So would love to hear just what was that experience like for you? One, how did you even hear about Willamette? Because that's also been a fun. I've been asking people like, how do you hear about their schools, especially those who went to D3 or D2? But how'd you hear about Willamette? What was your kind of basketball and athletic experience there?
Yeah. Willamette, I believe I heard about it. I had passed by it like many times just from growing up in Oregon and going down to Salem. Like I feel like there's only one of two things down in Salem. That's the capital, and that's Willamette. And they're right across the street from each other. So they're just kind of clumped in right there. And so I always saw that and whatnot. And then during high school, I think, some of the local colleges go to different tournaments and things like that. So then I believe at the time it was Mike Plank. He was, saw me at a tournament, and then I met Kip and things like that. So yeah, I remember I think it was like junior year. I kind of came to terms with between junior senior year that I may not play college basketball just because I wasn't getting a lot of recruitment and things like that. I did a little bit sophomore year, and then it kind of just died down, and that was that. And I was like, that's fine, because I also knew even if I did play college ball, like that definitely was going to be the last chapter. It wasn't like I was going to the league or anything. And so I was like, okay, I came to terms with that. And then, Willamette popped up. We went down for a visit, met with like Craig Hammond and some of the campus ministry folks and stuff like that. And that's what I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is where we felt we were being led. And so, yeah, so we went to Willamette there. And I think my college experiences as far as athletic goes was interesting in the sense of, when you always think about going to play in college, you're going to be, and not that I wasn't, but I think everyone has this vision of, I'm going to score this amount of points, or like, it's just going to be a good experience, and, we're going to be successful and all this stuff. But the first 2 years were rough, like on and off the court. I'd say on the court, just because we didn't win a ton of games. Off the court, I know freshman year, just trying to like find my groove and figure things out. And then also being homeschooled my entire life. This is the first time I'm like at a public school, even though obviously Willamette's a private school. So now I'm around 2,000 people every day. And then, just trying to figure out that. And then sophomore year, I remember the second half of the season, I was academically ineligible. So now, and it wasn't anything due to like I was out just like partying or not doing what I was supposed to do, but it was more of a time management thing. And then also using the resources on campus and utilizing them in an effective way, I think, an intentional way as well too. That's kind of what hindered me there. So yeah, those first couple of years, like I said, were kind of rough, but throughout that whole 4 years, and I think I learned this and understood this a little bit better, obviously afterwards, because hindsight's 2020, is that I was there for more than just basketball. And at the time I knew that. I'm like, I'm not here just to play basketball. I'm here to get an education and go on and do great things, but I think looking back, you also see the opportunities that you probably wouldn't have gotten if it hadn't been for going to Willamette and doing this. Basketball just was a tool to kind of get you there, so to speak. So,
man, that's seeing sports as a vehicle to get to where you need to go. Like you said, in hindsight, that makes sense. But in the moment, you're like, yo, no, this is it. I'm the athlete. I ain't going to, everything else, whatever. I'm focused on my sport. But that's fascinating that because very similar story, in like the first couple of years were very rough. And it's great that you grew up in Oregon, essentially, so you kind of knew what was going on. But even the academic side of things, because that's one of the things that they've talked about in high school, but you don't really know until you experience it, right? Where there is a little bit more emphasis to actually go to class or structure your week so that way you get your assignments done well, right? Not just completed, turned in, but actually, put some effort into it, because there's some you're applying yourself from a rigorous perspective, academically, intellectually, to these things. So just writing an essay 30 minutes before class ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
I may have done that a few times. So yeah, so being ineligible, because I have a very similar story, being ineligible and not being able to play the sport that you want to, that following uh, year or what have you, can be hard. Like that's taxing on your identity, on just how you, in your emotions, your everything. Um, Kind of what helped, like what or who helped you navigate that? Like, how did you process that season where you academically wasn't going well, athletically wasn't going well, you're feeling all out of sorts? Like, what was that kind of emotion or process that you're going through, and who helped you navigate that?
Yeah, I think I remember I found out that I was going to be academically ineligible for the next semester right at the end of the first semester. I think first semester ended, we were down in Cali for like a holiday tournament. And then, Kip gets the email rundown of, grades and all that stuff. So I found out when I was out of town and I knew my dad was picking me up from the airport. I'm like, man, this is it. Like, I'm done. Like, so he picked me up from the airport. We're shooting down the highway and I'm trying to figure out how to tell him, that I won't be playing the next semester. And I forget, I was like, Dad, like, I got to tell you something. Like, I don't want you to be mad, And so I told him, and he had the like complete opposite reaction than I thought he was going to have. I thought, he was just going to be like pissed, and just be like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you're going over here, you're messing around over here, trying to hang out with all these people instead of against the. But he literally just looked at me, he goes, all right. He goes, so what do you need help with? Like, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? Or what is it that you need support in? And I was like, well, and we kind of broke it down, it's like, I tried doing this, I tried going to office hours, but this, and so we found like more effective ways, like I said, to use the resources and stuff. So I think just the fact that like my parents knew, but also weren't like on my back or like disappointed in me. I didn't care if they were mad, but when they say I'm disappointed in you, the parents, that hits different, So I think that kind of allowed me to go forward and be okay with the mistake that I made, but going forward knowing that I'm going to correct that mistake and be able to kind of freely learn from it, if that makes sense. So I think that was a huge motivator in a way. And then when I got back to campus for second semester, Jade Aguilar was my counselor at the time. And so love her, super down to earth. And so she kind of helped me just as far as navigating classes and scheduling classes. And then the person too that I sat in their office the most was Professor Veltman in Spanish, because Spanish was the one that the class that was really giving me a hard time. So she always had her office hours open to me. And we sat there for like an hour and a half, just going through stuff like mock quizzes or whatever it might be. And so I think those three people there are really the ones that kind of helped me through that time and helped me structure my time. And then I ended up getting a 3.5 that semester. So
there you go.
It felt really good. Yeah.
That's good, man. Yes, there's always somebody or a group of people who walk alongside us, right? That help us tell us that we're not alone. And I think that's something that I for sure want to reiterate everywhere, right? It's like, hey, these trials, these tribulations, these actions that we're a part of, that we may feel like we're in the hole, essentially. Yes, you could build yourself out of it, but how greater or how quicker would you be able to get out of that if you reached out or people poured in, to help support you in that way? And it's awesome that even though it sounds scary, because I get it, telling your parents that you're messing up ain't right? That ain't fun. But it's awesome that they were there and said, okay, like let's create a plan. Let's create a game plan to get out of it, to work through it, and see success on the other side. Because like you're right, like yes, sports is a great avenue, but it's just a tool, it's a vehicle to get to where you want to go, where you need to go. Exactly. you a couple more questions kind of about this college period, and then we'll transition towards out of that. But I know faith is a formative, faith is really formative in your life, like through your family and then through school and or through your own journey as well.
Mhm.
How was that? Was that shaped? Was that rocked? Was that tried in many ways during college? What was that like for you, kind of navigating your faith journey in college?
Yeah. Yeah, having grown up like in the church since I was little, my dad being a pastor and whatnot, and then being homeschooled, like I was always surrounded by, family and faith. And so I think going to Willamette, even though it was only an hour away, was enough distance and enough time away to be able to kind of form my own walk with Christ. And we always say this of like, it's a relationship with Christ, right? So your relationship with Christ may be different than someone else's relationship with Christ. Same with, my relationship with a certain individual may be different than someone else's relationship with that certain individual. Like they may go and do these activities and we just watch TV together, whatever it is, but we still have that relationship, right? So that's the same way it is with Christ. And that's what I love about it, is that it's not this, checklist down the paper, or this like definitive, informative way of following Christ or being a Christian. It's okay. How is my walk with Christ and what I do going to bring me closer together with Christ? And I always knew kind of these things and kind of that concept, but I don't think it's anyone's fault, but I was never necessarily given a chance to explore that or what that looks like necessarily to me, because I was always with my parents. I was going to church with them and like listening to what they were saying and, reading the scriptures with them and things like that and stuff. And so then going to Willamette and seeing so many people from different walks of life and from different areas and different experiences and things like that and stuff, and then being presented with different experiences and different situations and whatnot, that's when you're really able to like, all right, do I go down the left side of this road or the right side, and really kind of form that relationship or form that path that you want. So that was huge. It also helped as well that, we had Craig Hammond,
Mhm.
uh, Ricardo, Richard, with campus ambassadors to kind of also be there to be bumpers, so to speak, to where like, well, yeah, I know you want to go on the right side of the lane, but just don't go too far because now you're gonna get in the gutter, kind of thing, and kind of help you a little bit on your path there. So yeah, I think those 4 years were really formative for me, to be able to, or to start to be able to kind of form what my relationship looks like, with Christ, and still be able to follow, you know, principle wise, what I've been raised on and stuff. So
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's so difficult, or you can see how difficult it can be. Like you said, you're on your own, a lot of newness that you're experiencing, and many ways where you can veer off the path. And similar to the academic sense, right? Without the right folks, without the right structure, or just some sort of presence of other individuals who've been there before, who can help kind of level set or realign, it's real easy to move past that. So yeah, shout out to Craig. I actually see him every once in a while, so it's pretty dope.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Um, cool, man. So yeah, so that's now, it sounds like we're moving forward. We've defined or redefined those barriers or those guardrails to help support you moving forward. Now you're transitioning post college, right?
Mhm.
One, did you even know what did you want to do once you graduated? And were you already in that field? So like what was post graduation look like? What did you aspire to do after you graduated?
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a teacher. And so I think when I first got to Willamette, they had the MAT program, and then sophomore year it closed down. So I'm like, oh shoot, okay. Which I mean, then that just meant instead of doing my master's there, then I just had to go somewhere else to do my master's. But I was hoping like it could just be kind of like this streamlined thing, just get it all done in one place, potentially even start working on my master's, kind of like what the NBA does, you know, in your senior year, junior, senior year, kind of start to have one foot in that sector as well. So that's what I wanted to do there. And then once we started getting into like senior year and whatnot, I had worked with the Tokyo International University of America, the sister school there at Willamette, with the Japanese students, exchange students. And I was like a resident assistant over the summer while they were here. And then I was, you know, helping kind of create different activities for them to do, and different cultural things that they could go see, and stuff like that. It's almost like a lesson planning, you know, but very light lesson planning. And then after college, I was like, you know what? I don't have any like major plans. I always wanted to go back to Texas. And so I was planning to go down to Texas and live with my brother, because he's right outside of Dallas. He's still out there. My sister's in Houston. And then down in Texas, you don't need a master's necessarily to teach, just a degree in whatever subject you want to teach. So I was like, okay, you know, my major's in sociology. I could do like sixth grade social studies or something like that, or
Right.
take a couple of certification classes and teach elementary, which I loved teaching elementary. Sixth grade is probably my my cutoff.
You don't want to teach middle school or high school?
I don't think so. Middle school I could probably get away with. Like if push came to shove. Now once they in high school, so nope. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, you cannot be helped. No, I'm just kidding. You on your own now. You grown. So yeah, I just wanted to stay down to elementary, because I really did feel like that. I felt like elementary you could have so much more of an impact, and an early impact on, you know, young kids' life and stuff like that, because they're just like baby birds. They soak up everything and they want to learn everything. Middle school, they're kind of starting to develop these like calluses and, you know, think they know what's going on. And then high school, it's like, unless they come from a really bad home life, and even that, sometimes they'll like forget everybody else. But it's kind of harder to squeeze your way in. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. And then I kind of went that direction after working at TIUA. They were like, hey, like, you work really well with Japanese students, and you want to go to Japan. There's this Japanese exchange teaching program. Why don't you apply to that?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sounds good. Like, I mean, you know, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I'll just move down to Texas like I planned. So yeah, I applied to that. And
Yeah, man, because you were over there for a couple years, right?
yep, 2015 to 17. Yeah.
That's wild. So I would imagine, I mean, you know, there's an aspect of wherever you're into a new space or new environment, there's like a culture shock, right? Of, you know, for us, we've experienced a little bit of that, of going to a college campus, and it's like, yo, this is completely different than my upbringing. And then even more so, you see that when you go to Japan, right? When you go to, I think you went to Tokyo. Did you go to Tokyo, or where'd you go?
I was outside of Tokyo, like countryside. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what was that dynamic like? You step off the plane and you're like, yo, okay, I'm about to go teach in a completely different context than I'm experiencing. Yeah. What were some of the lessons or things that you've experienced while you were there?
Yeah, so we landed in Tokyo, and this, you know, jet program pulls from different countries, different states in within the US. So I mean, there was like over 1,000 people at this hotel in Tokyo, and we were there for 3 days, just kind of doing like training. And then after that, they take us and all of our bags, and then we go out to wherever we're being posted, or I don't want to say stationed, but basically stationed. And so I just remember going to Tokyo, and my roommate from sophomore year, who was an exchange student from Japan, lived probably like a 10-minute walk from the hotel we were staying at, like in Tokyo. And we still kept in contact. So when I told him I was like moving to Japan, he was like, yo, you got to come visit, blah, blah. So it was cool to see him, because I hadn't seen him at that point for like 4 years, about 3 years. And so I got to hang out with him. But walking down the streets of Japan, you're like looking around, like all the lights and all these signs and stuff. And I'm like, this, like, I remember seeing stuff like this in pictures, you know, and now I'm like, literally right here. And I'm like trying to figure out, okay, what does this sign say? Because I knew no Japanese going over. And that was like another, I had people there that had watched every anime that ever could have been made and could quote it like the back of their hand, been studying Japanese since they were in 8th grade, like all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I love Japanese culture, but I don't know very much about it. And I only knew 5 words going over. 3 of them I learned on the plane ride over, you know what I mean? So I'm landing there just like trying to soak it all in and study it and all that stuff. So that, I think that also changed my experience in the sense of, I was willing and open to everything because I didn't know anything versus others, I think because they had studied it, the culture so much in language and things like that, may have been a little bit more closed off or like, oh yeah, I know about that. And, but yeah, let's go inside. Like this cat cafe where there's just cats running around and you can just chill and be on your laptop. Like that's kind of dope. You know what I mean? Or like an owl cafe where it's the same thing, but it's owls. Like what, so they're like, yeah, they have them everywhere. And I'm like, well, then let's go everywhere. So I was like ready to dive in, but yeah, that was that first initial landing, and it's hot over there too. It's just like humid. So that like hit me like a brick wall too. Even, and I adjusted to Oregon weather, but I'm used to that humid weather from Texas. But that was different. So, yeah, that was interesting. Those first 3 days, yeah.
Go in and soak it in. Like, yeah, why not? I mean, why not? You're there. Yes, you may have seen it or read it or learned one of the 3 of the 5 words, but let's go.
Exactly. Yes.
So for 2 years, were you still geared towards working with that kind of elementary, middle school, or did they place you into that like, all right, I know you want to work here, but these kids need the most, or these kids need that love too? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so they placed me, like I said, countryside. So if you look at Japan, Tokyo's on the east coast of the island. I was completely like opposite, 7 hours on the west coast. And then like for those who may know, like Osaka, Kyoto, kind of like down in the south, I was 4 hours north of that. So there's only like, like one train line. It was a technical high school. So high school in Japan is only 3 years. And with technical high schools, 90 to 95% of the students after they graduate are going straight into the workforce versus like there's some other like academic high schools where, they'll go to a university, whether it be in Japan or, studying abroad and things like that. So I was at a technical high school, which I think I didn't mind because it was in Japan and, we were going to be teaching English as a second language versus doing it with like elementary. I think it would be a little bit harder, but with high school, you can at least connect with them, even if you don't speak the same language. Now, I mean, you can with elementary, but I don't know what it was. I just felt comfortable being in a high school. So that was what I did 4 out of the 5 days. But then on Mondays, I would catch a bus and they would take me out even further into the country. And we went to the special needs school. And there I was with elementary, middle school, and high school. So I think I taught like 3 or 4 classes there. And it was like 1 at each level, and then maybe 2 or 1 elementary, 1 middle school, and then like 2 at the high school level. And that was a lot of fun as well too. Also too, to kind of like see that setup and how they teach special needs and just the life skills that they teach as well too there. And that was, yeah. So that's what I ended up doing the 2 years I was there.
That's amazing. And I would imagine that's nonstop. I mean, obviously that's your job. So you're literally teaching, like it's in exploring and whatnot and doing that. But the main focus is forming a positive experience in education for these students in this context and experiencing that kind of dynamic and culture from different people in different areas. Yeah, and you did it. So that's dope. Just the fact that you did it. That's dope. You also play basketball over there, right?
Yeah, they had kind of like a men's city league. And so one of the teachers at my secondary school I go to on Mondays, he played basketball and he was like, yeah, we have like these open gyms, on Wednesday nights if you want to come. So it was maybe about a 20-minute bike ride because that's how I got around everywhere, bike or train. For a while, I think in the last year, I had a car, which was a whole different other experience trying to get my license. And that was interesting. But I would ride my bike like to the gym all the time, and it's like pitch black. with my little light, you know, and it's this, I don't want to say barn, but it almost looks like a barn, and it's just like off kind of in the middle of this rice field.
Yeah.
So we go play over there, and I was playing with them, and they're like, hey, like we have this team, like, do you want to play with us? I was like, yeah, sounds great. So they gave me the jerseys, which were dope. I actually just popped up on my Facebook memories. It was like a pink jersey, shorts and top, and then white, and it had pink and black on it. I was like, these are interesting. It was Pietos, and Pietos is like kind of like clowns in Japanese. I'm like, yeah, we look like clowns with these pink jerseys. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah. So I got to play in that. But.
Hey, man. Yeah, I thought, I remember seeing the pictures of you balling. I'm like, oh, snap. Joseph got picked up. Like, hey,
I wish.
I was like, okay, you went over there to teach, and all of a sudden he's playing on a professional league in Japan. Why not? Go for it.
Why not? Oh man, I know. I wish that would have been cool, but no, it's just
Man, still, regardless, like again, basketball is a vehicle towards the experiences, to these connections and relationships, and if you still got it, why not use it? So that's awesome that you got to continue to build community in that way, and still, stay active and get your shot right and all that kind of stuff.
right.
Did you think that? So I know it was a 2-year program. Was there ever thought of you staying past those 2 years, or were you like, nah, this is fun, but I'm ready to get back home? What was that? What was that transition like?
I was in between. I was like, I think it was towards the end of the second. The way they do it though is like you get there August. So I got there August 2015. That very next December 2015, they ask you if you want to renew your contract. And the contract is from August to August. So that meant if I renewed my contract that December, then the contract I'm renewing is from that next August 2016 to 17. I'm like, you're asking me in the middle of winter, and winters are like rough there. Like you just walk everywhere because you can't ride your bike or anything. It's freezing cold. You can't really go see anyone because of the snow and all that stuff. So like, it's just like a really down time, especially for foreigners, because you don't really have anyone you can connect with. And then being an extrovert, I'm like just stuck in my house. Yeah, it's just all bad, right? And I'm like, so now I don't think right now is a good time to ask me if I want to renew my contract, because I'm going to say no, but I know I want to be here. So, but I ended up renewing it. I prayed about it and whatnot. And so I renewed my contract. And I think probably midway through that second year, I was like, man, like I actually got to experience Japan, of going to Tokyo a couple times, going to Okinawa, the cultural festivals and stuff. But also at the time I was in a long distance relationship. And we started dating like 2 months before I went to Japan.
Wow.
So then she was like, you know what? And it was cool too, because right at 2 weeks after I left for Japan, she went to Uganda for 4 months. And so we're both, overseas for the first time in our own experiences, going back and forth, talking about these experiences. And then she went back home after those 4 months. But she was like, if you do another year, then I'm like, I can do 2, but any more than that, we'll just have to wait till you get back, and hopefully, things align and stuff. And I was trying to figure out, like, do I want to? Because it's easy to get just kind of stuck there. Especially being a foreigner and an English teacher, like that's just what you do. Unless your Japanese is very proficient, then you might be able to find other jobs and things like that and stuff. So I was like, yeah, 2 years is enough, because I know I could just get comfortable here. Like I've already gotten comfortable, and there were things that I wanted to do and kind of check off the list instead of just being stagnant.
Yeah.
So I think those 2 things, just like that desire to move on with life, and then also having a significant other back home, brought me back after those 2 years. And I mean, it was all worth it because we're married now, and got a kid on the way. So yeah, so worth it.
Oh, yeah. We'll touch on that a little bit too in a little bit, but those are significant factors that will determine whether or not you continue one path or another. And it's awesome that engagement experience was there. But I know that, like, okay, so we may do a quick time jump here.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
you're in Japan, you're teaching, you're going this route to want to be a teacher, but now I know you work at healthcare. You're in the healthcare field, right? Which
Yes.
somehow we all stumble in some career that we didn't even know I'm in the same boat. I was like, I don't know how I got here, but what? So like, how did you make that jump from coming back home after teaching overseas and getting this desire to want to teach and be engaged in that way to now working in healthcare? And I want to know more too about what that work looks like, but just what was that jump like? And yeah, how did you even get there?
Yeah. So when I came back, I worked at Catlin Gable for 3 years here in Portland.
What's that? What's
Uh,
that?
it's a private school here next to St. Providence Hospital. And so I was a teaching assistant there in like the fourth grade classroom. I actually applied to that while I was in Japan and interviewed for it and got the job while I was still in Japan because I'm a planner. I'm like, I want to have like a job set up when I get back, blah, blah. So I did all that. And then I think it was like my second year at Catlin. I was like, okay, I want to start pursuing my master's and whatnot and stuff. And I got to talk and I was like, but I'm too far like post grad and too far into this adulting thing. So I still need to work. I can't just like take 2 years off or a year and a half off and, go to school. And so I was in the talks with Catlin Gable of could I kind of basically like keep my teaching assistant job here, but then somehow also have like my student teaching done here as well through Portland State. Like, is there any way we could work out a partnership and whatnot and stuff? And so they were awesome. Like, you know what? That's been on the talks, like whether you know it or not, of like us trying to partner with Portland State. Because I think they have a partnership with the University of Portland. And so we get interns, every year from University of Portland. And Portland State was always one they kind of wanted to like dabble in or check out. So I'm like, cool, like let's do it. I'll be your guinea pig. Um, and so I was trying to go through the process of doing that. And this is another setback of, and it's also too like some of the what we may categorize as worst setbacks are only setups for your best comebacks. And I think that was at that time I was like, okay, I applied, I went up to Portland State, went to my interview, and they're like, you know what, Joseph, like you'd fit so great into our program, just your experiences of being a teaching assistant, going to Japan, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, your GPA is lower than what our acceptance, GPA is. And I think it was lower by, I don't even know, like 0.2 or something like that. Like it wasn't like a huge difference. And so they're like, you can take all these graduate level classes just to show that you can perform at the graduate level. And then you could possibly be accepted into the program after that. And I was like, wait a minute, possibly? Like, I don't want to waste money taking these 3 classes that aren't even going to like go towards the master's program. And I could potentially be accepted. Like that didn't seem right. So now I'm back to square one, trying to figure out, okay, so then what do I do here? Because I was tired of being a teaching assistant. I wanted to kind of do my own thing and be in control of whether it be my own classroom or whatever it was, instead of working for someone. And not in like, I hate working for people. It was just like I was
Right.
ready to be that leader that I know that I am. And so at the time as well too, my wife works at a dance studio. And so one of the girls at the dance studio, her dad is one of the pediatric psychiatrists at OHSU. And he started this program. It's called the Niche Program, Novel Interventions in Children's Healthcare. And so he had been trying to get Alexis, my wife, to do this position as an interventionist for a while. But the on-call part of it, kind of like, I don't know if I really want to do that, especially with dance and blah, blah, and all that stuff. Well, I met him and he's like, yo, like, I think you'd be really good, for this position, yada, yada. I was like, yeah, but I'm getting ready to go into the school year. I think this was like July. And I'm like, school starts next month. Like I would hate to just drop them right now and stuff. I've already basically committed to this next school year. Plus, like you said, going from that to technically healthcare, I'm like, that's not where I pictured myself at all. So now am I just, jumping boat because this didn't work out for me? Or am I actually like following a natural path that's working out for me? So I'm sitting there trying to, determine that, pray about it, figure it all out. And I had a great talk with him. And my whole goal and the whole thing I've ever wanted to do is be able to like mentor kids and like help educate kids, whatever that might look like. And I always remember looking back at the times that I think I thrived the most or really enjoyed the most were those one-on-one times or the small group times with kids, like even in a school setting. So whether it be, I take these 3 kids and we work on multiplication, or, some kids messing up on the playground and think they're in the NFL, playing football out there. So they're pushing people and stuff and trying to be like, yo, hey, come here. Let me put this in perspective for you. You're not Odell. I'm sorry, not yet, So, but I noticed that like those are the times I really enjoyed, not necessarily, the whole class of 40 kind of thing. And with this job, that's what it is. Like, so we work with families that have chronic illnesses, but social disparities. And so, it could be they're trying to manage, their type 1 diabetes or cystic fibrosis, whatever it is. But then also like these social barriers are getting in the way of them actually being able to manage it. And so, a lot of times providers don't see that in the 20, 30 minute, visit that they're there. Or if they do or kind of get a hint of it, there's not a lot that they can necessarily do. I mean, they could go to social work, but then social work, their caseload is, 60, 70. So they're all spread thin. And so we're kind of like the last line of defense for a lot of providers. And so I knew within that, I was like, okay, cool. I still get to work with youth. I still get to work like that one-on-one kind of thing. And then the healthcare part, I told him, I was like, I know nothing about healthcare. Like, you expect me to, make these calls and care coordination and stuff. Like, I can't even care coordinate for myself. I don't even know the first person to call, so like, what am I doing? He's like, no, like, that's perfect. Like, you'll learn along the way. We train for practice, but as far as like the skills, like you have that and all that stuff. I was like, all right, like, somebody ends up, going to this doctor when they're supposed to go over here. Like, don't blame me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. My bad. So that's kind of how I ended up in that. And now I'm going on, been with them for 1.5 years now. So, yeah.
What's awesome about this is that, as in just me knowing a bit about your story prior to you hearing it, but even so, this position that you currently have has that sociology connection.
Mm-hmm. Right? Like, absolutely, it does. Yeah.
What's going on in the world and how we are affected and impacted by that, and the disparities that we experience based upon our identities, and how that relates to the systems that we are part of, right? And those are tremendous barriers. Like, if you don't,
right.
You will end up in worse conditions than you normally would be, right? So stepping in and assisting, that is excellent. And then even as you stated, just the relationships that you are building from a one-to-one or one to like a small group setting, like that, people need that type of relationship and that type of connection to feel seen, to feel heard and understood, and be able to succeed in whatever avenue that they're part of. So like, you're really tying in, the education and the experiences of what you're tracking to this position and serving folks in a greater way. And then even reaching further back to be the light in that space, right? To be somebody who is helping somebody see, dignity, worth, love in this position, right? And in a dire state where it doesn't really happen often. Like in healthcare, you don't really think about, except for the birth of a child, right? There's not much past that. It does kind of get downhill quick when you're in the healthcare setting, but you are helping create those pathways and avenues for people to see some hope, and being that person in that, man. So that's dope. That's dope, man. Yeah, the healthcare thing. I even, because I'm 7 years into this healthcare thing, and I still don't know what we doing out here.
Exactly.
Man. Okay. So here we are now as an interventionist. You're still supporting the youth. You're still engaging with them one-on-one. I know off to the side, you're also coaching, right? Like you're still coaching and active in that space. So again, the basketball vehicle is still continuing to move, right? To engage kids, to engage youth in that way. Are you out here like Phil Jackson? Like, is that the move? Are you the Phil Jackson of youth basketball right now? What's going on, man?
Oh man, no, I've been fortunate enough, and that's been fun for me. Is like I think that is a goal of mine at some point is to become a head coach, of a high school program. When I came back from Japan, I just wanted to get in somewhere and just coach, seventh, eighth grade or whatnot and stuff. So I hit up Pat Adelman, who was the assistant at Willamette my junior year. Because I knew that he was coaching at Lincoln High School here in Portland. He was the head coach there. I said, hey man, like, do you have any openings or anything just for like seventh, eighth grade youth? He was like, yeah, I do. I think I have a seventh grade. He goes, why don't you come and be my varsity assistant? I was like, all right, like this is going to basically be my first year of coaching high school basketball. Besides like Japan, I, coached the team there, especially with that relationship with the coach, but he's also a teacher, and like it's different there in Japan. So there would be practices where the kids are just doing it themselves because he has to go and do a bunch of stuff in the office and whatnot and stuff. It was weird. Like I never experienced that, in high school for us, it's like, okay, yeah, they're the math teacher, but they're also the basketball coach. So at 3:15 when we have practice, he's there with us, and so that gave me an opportunity in Japan, kind of going back a little bit to like be able to run a practice. And your communication has to be like on point because again, I don't really speak the language. The kids kind of know English a little bit, but now you really just have to like demonstrate and whatnot. Now it's a lot of fun. So like, but I didn't really count that 2 years as coaching. I was like, I just felt like that didn't count. And so then I'm going into this. He's like, yeah, be my varsity assistant. I'm like, okay, like if you want. So sure enough, jumped on board with them. That was a fun year, just like learning and being in practices with him and what he was doing and stuff. He was running a lot of the same stuff that we ran at Willamette when he was there my junior year. So then I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And that helped my transition because then I could really step in because I actually knew the offense, knew what they were doing and everything, and could, be like, yo, this is what's going to be open, blah, blah, blah. So that was my first year there. Second year there, I was the head freshman coach. Third year there, I was the head JV coach. And then he went to Shemeketa down there in Salem, and he's an assistant down there. And then after he left, I was like, I don't know if I want to become a head coach right now. And I think at the time too, we just found out that my wife was pregnant. So I was like, this is probably not a good time to be doing all that. Plus I was starting, I was starting my new job in healthcare, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. It's 24/7, you're on call and available to family. So trying to take on this big of running a program plus this, like, I was like, yeah, I don't want to set myself up for failure. So I just kind of waited. But then the last year during the pandemic, I went over to Milwaukee High School, was in a varsity assistant there and helping with the program. And then same thing this year in doing that. So I'm enjoying it. I'm going to be there as much as I can. I told them, with the baby on the way and whatnot, but yeah, that's kind of where the coaching thing has been going for me, but it's been good.
Love it. Hey, man, you still got it. Hey, I love the fact that even, in Japan, you stated that you had to do a lot of demonstrating in order to model what this looks like, which again, there's a principle there, right? Like a lot of people can latch on to something if they see it more than what has been said. If they can see it, then they can get it. And that's a tremendous way from a coaching perspective, which that you should still count that as coaching, because you got to show a kid how to do the rip through. You got to show them how to set the screen. And that's just, again, part of teaching, right? And I'm sure that helped in the way that you engage the kids. Like, okay, I can tell you how to set the down screen, but let me show you what it should look like. So that way, when you pop open, all that kind of stuff. But that's dope, man. Yeah, man. Hey, if you out here winning, getting all the rings, I'm excited to see that. I just want to see the picture of you with all the rings. Yeah, hey, championship.
Hey, man.
Dang. Okay, so you're married, about to have a baby.
Yeah.
Wow. How you feeling? Let's just start there. How you feeling?
Man, it's like I'm just so anxious, and we have this conversation pretty often of just like what that's gonna look like. Obviously the more common comments, that we get from people is like, enjoy your sleep while you can. And, oh man, like your life is about to change drastically and like all this stuff. And it's like, cool. I know that, but like, how is it going to change? You know what I mean? Like, and obviously people can tell me, but at the same time, this is our family, this is our life. So, it could change in this way or that way. And that's what I think I'm excited for and anxious for, because there has been a lot of transitions that she and I have gone through, these past 6 years that we've been together. Whether it be from being long distance for 2 years and only seeing each other things like 2, maybe 3 times during those 2 years. And in the first 2 years that we're dating, not even like, so those are like kind of like formative 2 years, so to speak. And then coming back and transitioning back into that and what that looks like for us, and then transitioning, into the house and getting married and like all these transitions, and also too trying to figure each other out along the way. I'm just excited to see kind of like how this baby is going to change us and how we're going to transition with that, because I think we do a great job of rolling with the punches and transitioning together. So that's what I'm excited for. I'm like ready for this baby to be here. I'm like, okay, got enough mom time in the belly. Like, it's time to come out here. I'm trying to talk to you, man.
Let's go. Come on.
Right, exactly. Oh man.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be an amazing time.
And
And you know what? You're gonna be, you're already an amazing husband. You're gonna be an amazing dad. Uh, you know, you're intentional with your relationships. You're intentional about being the light and wanting to see other people succeed in this way, man. And so you're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be exciting. That's
Thank you. Yeah, super excited.
right now after this, I'm going to hop out there and see them go ham. You know what I'm saying? With my 2 boys. It's great. Cool, man. Well, hey, I want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share a bit about your story for the listeners, and even tracking just the ways in which you've navigated life, adulting, navigated just different cultures and settings, and the approaches that you take when it comes to making a decision, taking action, engaging people in a way that's very intentional, that's very loving, informative in that context, man. If you were to give, like, let's say you were sitting with your old self, right? Your 18-year-old Joseph Jackson coming into college. And after you've gone through these years of experiences so far, what would be some of the words or some of the advice you would give to yourself in that stage, in that season, knowing what you know now?
It's not, man, that's hard. I think even we kind of talked about it as far as like where we started off, or where I started off, and like where I'm at now. Is that don't get too blinded or too jaded. I think sometimes we have this idea of how things should play out or how you want them to play out. And sometimes, and we all say this, like, life throws you curveballs, like, but it's true. Like, like you're going this way, and all of a sudden you turn and you're like, wait, how did I end up here? But you got to make sure that you see in that situation the possibilities. So even though, like, I'm not in education, whatnot and stuff, I'm still doing what I love of working with youth, and it's in the healthcare system, which I never would have thought I would be a part of. But it's still, something that I'm passionate about and things like that. So I think just, as you're going along in life and stuff, and setbacks come and redirection comes, is not to lose sight of your end goal and your end purpose, because you can find that goal and you can find that purpose in different ways, and it may present itself in different ways. But because we have this picture of this is how it's supposed to look and this is where it's going to be at, sometimes we miss opportunities where it's actually over here for you. So I think that's what I would probably say to my younger self.
There you go. Amen. That's a good word. And it's still applicable. Still applicable. That's good.
It is.
Oh man. Well, hey, again, thanks again for being on the podcast. Where can people find you if you want to plug yourself online? I know that you're gonna have a picture one day with all the rings with your basketball team. I know you do a lot of singing in the car and whatnot, and then
Yeah.
where can people find you online to track your journey?
On Instagram, it is J_Jackson77. And then same thing for Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter that much, mostly just scrolling. And then Facebook, just Joseph Jackson. And LinkedIn, yeah, Joseph Jackson as well too. So please give me a follow. I can drop my email as well too if anyone wants to email or anything like that. That email's jdjackso77@gmail.com. So
What's the significance of 7-7 before we wrap up? What's the significance of that?
7 in the biblical sense is completion or perfection, and so 7 has always been one of my favorite numbers, along with 3, because 3 represents the Trinity, and then 5 means grace. So those are kind of like my 3 numbers I love: 3, 5, and 7. But 7 is probably my favorite just because it means perfection and completion. So
There we go. Yeah, let's go. Thanks once again, man, for being on the podcast. I appreciate it, brother.
yeah, thank you, Ray. Appreciate you.